Hi, it's me again, Professor Kristen Leonard. I'm going to take some time to kind of go over the details of a persuasive essay, or basically a personal position paper. So it's something that is a lot of the same details you will recognize in terms of just a formal academic composition, but there are a couple of nuances that I just want to point out to you. So just as when we write a formal composition, you're going to have an introduction paragraph, and same factors, the same details apply. You're going to have a hook that gains your reader's attention. Sometimes that's a surprising statistic or data, maybe a memorable quote from someone that might be relevant, or an expert, or something that brings our reader into the paper, maybe a moving anecdote, a story, or a personal example of somebody who can bring us into that topic, something similar to that. You will have a thesis at the end of your introduction paragraph, and that should be, in a persuasive essay, that's going to be a sentence that establishes your position on the topic. Often that sentence will contain a word, or maybe words such as should, must, or have to, or need to, ought to, something similar to that. The time has come that we must take action. This is something that needs to be resolved. It ought to be regulated, something similar to that. Now, and additionally, in that introduction paragraph, we're going to give our readers a preview of the main points to come. For example, you'll see an example in a second. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and look at a sample paper, which I think it details this beautifully. Okay, this is actually something available on the web, and I will put a link to it below. Okay, here we are. Okay. So this actually is a wonderful MLA, a sample. It's actually a wonderful example of MLA as well. Okay, let's go ahead and just discuss the details that we find in terms of the opening paragraph, introduction. So notice we have a title, a call to action, regulate use of cell phones on the road. The reason this is separated is it doesn't fit on one line. So we have to put it on two lines. The natural place to put it on two lines is right there at the colon. This is actually in MLA format. Note the person, student, it's a student sample, just an example. Angela Daly, and then the professor would be Professor Chavez. I would be Professor Leonard. And if you go to another class, even if your teacher goes by Dr. Garcia or Dr. Edwards, in MLA, we write them as professor. Okay. The next is a class, English 101, and then the date, whatever. 14 March 2020, 22, 23, 24. So we have here the opening hook. When a cell phone goes off in a classroom or at a concert, we are irritated, but at least our lives are not endangered. Hopefully that opening sentence kind of pulls you in, or makes you be a little bit interested in what's going on, okay? Now we go ahead and we develop that point. The goal here is to get us to that thesis statement. Notice we're actually previewing the points at the same time. I mean us, when I say us, I mean the writer is. When we are on the road, however, irresponsible cell phone drivers are more than irritating. They are putting our lives at risk. Strong statement. Many of us have witnessed drivers so distracted by dialing and chatting that they resemble drunk drivers, weaving between lanes, for example, or nearly running down pedestrians in crosswalks. A number of bills to regulate use of cell phones on the road have been introduced to state legislatures, and the time has come to push for their passage. Now right there were the main preview points that will be discussed in the paper in the paragraphs to come. Here is our thesis statement. Regulation is needed because drivers using phones are seriously impaired, and because laws on negligent and reckless driving are not sufficient to punish offenders. So notice here, we actually have 2 points in our thesis, 2 factors that will be discussed. You'll see right here, and it'll tell us in the margin, thesis asserts Angela Daly's main point. So again, we have a strong statement. This is a persuasive essay or a personal position paper. It's a stance. Regulation is needed. It is what's being asserted. Regulation on cell phones, but we find that later. Because 1, drivers using cell phones are seriously impaired, and 2, because laws on negligent and reckless driving are not sufficient to punish offenders. Now, when we go forward, you'll see the same components apply in a personal position paper. We have a clear topic sentence. No one can deny that cell phones have caused traffic deaths and injuries, period. The topic sentence is going to tell readers what will be discussed in that paragraph. You see here, I've actually put this in yellow because this right here is going to support our writer's first point. Regulation is needed because drivers using phones are seriously impaired. So this whole section right here is all supporting that one assertion that this writer makes. Cell phones were implicated in 3 fatal accidents in November 1999 alone. So we keep on going on, and you'll notice in a personal position paper, we are using evidence. And you'll see here this MLA format. We are citing our source, which is Best Off. That is the last name of the source. And right here, we have an example. Morgan's mother, Patty Penna, reports a driver, quote, ran a stop sign at 45 miles per hour, broadsided my vehicle, and killed Morgan as she sat in her car seat, end quote. So we have an example here of a mother who is explaining that a driver ran a stop sign. And then we find out another example. So in this right here, in this paragraph, we're giving 3 anecdotes that actually come from a source, a writer by the name of Best Off. So right here, you'll notice also Best Off, because we are citing it as our source, this should be listed also on our in the last page in that works cited. And as I scroll to the very end, I will see Best Off right here under works cited. Best Off Len. Cell phone use increases risk of accidents, but users willing to take that risk. So right here we have, and again, it's listed alphabetically. And so this here comes from a source, WRAL online, and we are citing it so we know where this comes from. All right. Now we continue on. You'll see the next paragraph follows the same pattern. We have a strong topic sentence. Expert testimony, public opinion, and even cartoons suggest that driving while phoning is dangerous. Now we have our strong topic sentence, and now we're bringing evidence to add weight. It's not just our position. This is our position with evidence added to it. Here we go. Francis Bentz, an expert on the relation between cell phones and accidents, estimates that between 450 and 1,000 crashes a year have some connection to cell phone use. Latent, C9. Again, if we were to scroll to the very back, the last page, we should see a source with the last name Layton. Okay, it's C9 because that would be a newspaper. It would be, C would be I guess it's like a newspaper, has an actual like C section. In a survey published by Farmers Insurance Group, 87% of those polled said cell phones affect a driver's ability, and 40% reported having close calls with distracted drivers by phone. Again, this also, it comes from that same source. So we aren't citing it twice. Many cartoons have depicted the very real dangers of driving while distracted. See figure 1. This actually is a great example of how a figure, illustration or photo would be, or chart would be handled in MLA. See figure 1, and so we would scroll down to figure 1, and you'll see figure 1 here. We have figure 1, and we are also noting the cartoonist, what it is, and the source, okay? Occasionally we have to put like a description too for surveys and stuff, but we're not going to go through that. Yeah. Okay, then we go on here. We have another paragraph. Again, this is all yellow because all these paragraphs are all adding weight to that one point that our student sample writer is making, that drivers using phones are seriously impaired. So it's a statement that she is making, and all of these paragraphs include evidence that's supporting that point. Now, notice we still have, she's doing a great job making all these points right here to support why, you know, drivers using cell phones are seriously impaired. But you see, I went ahead and marked this, but we do get to the green at page 4. And with the green, she actually uses this also to counter her claim, and she's including that opposing argument. So she's addressing the opposite stance. And here we open. Some groups have argued that state traffic laws make legislation regulating cell phone use unnecessary. Sadly, this is not true. Here she is transitioning back into her point. So she has touched upon the opposite perspective, and now she is bringing us to what she is making an assertion. This is not true. So you'll see here, this is the second point in her thesis that she is wanting to prove to us. Laws on negligent and reckless driving are not sufficient. So again, she doesn't even touch on this point till page 4. There's really no formula to that as long as it's addressed. Some people will do it maybe in the same paragraph if you have enough room and if these are connected in a way that is logical, okay? So again, we are on page 4, and laws on traffic safety vary from state to state, and drivers distracted by cell phones can get off with light punishment even when they cause fatal accidents. Okay, for example, although the midshipman mentioned earlier, that was in paragraph 2, was charged with vehicular manslaughter for the deaths of John and Carol Hall, the judge was unable to issue a verdict of guilty. Under Maryland law, he could only find the defendant guilty of negligent driving and impose a $500 fine. Again, Layton C1. Notice too, we're following that same standard with MLA. When we either summarize, paraphrase, or quote directly, we always include a source. I again would assert that every time we're including data, I think of it as numbers, dollar amounts, weights, dates, percentages, all of that. It's obviously a fact. We aren't born knowing it's a $500 fine. So we need to tell our readers where that information comes from. As a teacher, my eye goes to numbers right away. So if there is a number in a paper and a student is asserting something with so many tons or so many dollars or so many, what percentage, or maybe something, or maybe a date something occurred, that's a fact that needs to be cited. So I expect to see a citation nearby. So, you know, this is actually beautifully rendered because it's very clear that this author is changing. We go from fact to fact. It's very clear where the source comes from. So right here, this information of $500 fine comes from Layton C1. Such a light sentence is not unusual. That's the writer's words. The driver who killed Morgan Penna in Pennsylvania received 2 tickets and a $50 fine and retained his driving privileges. That fact comes from Penna. In Georgia, a young woman distracted by her phone ran down and killed a 2-year-old. Her sentence was 90 days in boot camp and 500 hours community service. This comes from Ippolito J1. So then this last sentence belongs to the writer. Again, we are still in that green section, the part of the thesis that Angela Daly, our pretend student writer, is asserting that laws are light and not adequate. So we have here a strong topic sentence. When certain kinds of driver behavior are shown to be especially dangerous, we wisely draft special laws making them illegal. And again, this is all that same point she is proving. I just want to bring you to the very last page here, to the conclusion. And you'll see right here, this is the conclusion. She doesn't start with "in conclusion." She just basically jumps right in there and makes a strong statement. Because of mounting public awareness of the dangers of drivers distracted by phones, comma, state legislatures must begin to take the problem seriously. Again, we have that must statement. We know her stance right there. Absolutely, it is must take the problem seriously. It's definitely an issue that's gaining steam with the country, says Matt Sundin of the National Conference of State Legislatures, quoted in Layton C9. Okay. Lon Anderson of the American Automobile Association agrees there is momentum building, he says, to pass laws. The time has come for states to adopt legislation restricting the use in moving vehicles. So this is actually a wonderful example of how she, in that last paragraph, it's firmly planted on her point, okay? There's no doubt. She's even used two experts right there to, here, don't listen to me, listen to my experts. Matt Sundin of the National Conference of State Legislatures and Lon Anderson of the American Automobile Association. It's kind of unusual to have quotes in that last paragraph. It's not, depending on what your teacher says, I would always default at that. I personally don't care if it's powerful, if it gets your point across, that's fine. The common classic composition would suggest or recommend it's only your words in that last paragraph, summarizing and extending your thesis to future places. But anyway, this is a great sample, and again, your words are the primary focus of the essay. Your research is simply there to back up what your stance and your claim on this issue or topic is. Okay? All right. With that, I'm going to sign off. Have a great day.